Eye of newt and hair of dog, give me the power to cure the frog. Listen. Magic. Off to my cauldron. Where's my broom? Soden fearlen steerly, wischen heila virally, waden saila virally, he thrums away.
I was so lucky. I did a film test for it, and I was so lucky to get the film, the part in Thomasina. And there were a lot of other people who were much better than me and much prettier and all the rest of it. But Walt Disney said, "She's my girl." And I was delighted. And I loved it because there were a lot of animals in it, and I'm very fond of animals, and this was absolutely fantastic. And I took the part so seriously that when I was preparing for it, I took all these animals back to my little tiny flat in Chelsea. I took back a Bambi, I had 3 rabbits, a jackdaw, I had mice. Anyway, after about a couple of days, I realised that this wasn't really right, and all the animals went back to their homes. But during that time, I did lots of photographs with the animals and got to know the animals very well. And I suppose I sort of became Laurie the Witch. She was a loner, and she loved animals, and I think Laurie had a great understanding of life and what is important in life and how to make people understand the balance of life.
Don't you see that if Thomasina is the love your child has lost, only you can give it back to her?
She was unusual, and she wasn't like everybody else. And she had a life of her own. She sang in Gaelic, and she spoke Gaelic.
Shh, listen. It's the witch singing, bang your drum. She is crazy.
I want to go home.
I think the children were afraid of her because she lived on her own in the woods, and somebody who doesn't do the normal thing is frightening.
Let me go!
Oh, it's all right. What's the matter?
But I remember the children, all the children were very, very sweet, and I loved working with them. Very adorable. Absolutely adorable and so gifted. And what was really interesting is that you look at a child and you would say, I don't know why they've done that, and that's not really working. And you look at it on the screen, and it was amazing. Children are naturally the most wonderful actors.
I know, Jamie's just learning the pipes. He's not very good at it
I can
yet,
play
but...
Macintosh's Lament.
And I'll wear my dress kilt with my skeen do and sporran, and everyone in the street will say, there goes the poor widow McDooey, a burying of our dear Thomasina. Foully done to death, God rest her soul.
Wolfie? Really?
Aye, it'll be a great, great procession, you'll see.
We'll go and get Thomasina now.
Aye, come on.
We had a lot of orange cats in the film because you can't work cats non-stop in the same way that you can't work children non-stop. They have their special hours. So there were a lot of orange cats, and you will notice in the film that sometimes they look a little different, and then sometimes the cat had to get wet. Well, you wouldn't want the same cat to keep getting wet. We had special cats that did floating down for the dream sequence. I know we had 40 Siamese cats for the dream sequence. I'm sure that the people who were in charge of the animals knew which ones were best for which shots. So there were a lot of consideration for the cats. They were all very nice, the cats. All the animals were lovely. Even the badgers were very, very, you know, badgers are vicious creatures, vicious.
Cussed gin traps.
Look what it's done to
Mind yourself! Drop it. It'll tear your throat out.
But even they were rather nice, but they stink to high heaven, badgers.
You're mad.
Aye, so I hear.
And I was holding them all the time, so everywhere I went in the canteen, people were walking away from me because I'd been holding the badgers and really stunk as well.
No creature ever harmed
Don't
me.
touch them. Leave them to me.
To you.
Patrick McGoohan is a very special person because he's very quiet and very reserved. I don't suppose I ever had much of a conversation with him. I'd worked with him in his television series, and then I worked with him on Thomasina, and he probably never chatted. You know, he would be quiet, he'd stay on his own, he'd look at his script, he'd come and work. I enjoyed working with him very much. It was a very matter-of-fact and nice working relationship.
I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Forgive? I'm glad you told me of yourself. And I told you.
Aye.
Well, the most lovely thing was when I arrived at Renfrew Airport in a new dress to do the filming in Scotland. It was the first time that I'd ever arrived at an airport, and all these people rushed up and took my photograph, and I wrote back to my mother and said, oh, the most exciting thing has ever has happened to me. I really feel like a star. When you're suddenly being treated like a star, it's the most amazing thing if you're not used to it. You know, going to a beautiful hotel and flowers in the room and people collecting you in cars, just being spoilt rotten. And I know I was very lucky to be working for Walt Disney, because in those days, I mean, he used to oversee everything. I think he even saw all the rushes of every film, and there might be, 5 films or 10 films going on around the world. He seemed to be everywhere and seeing everything and deciding about everything without interfering. After Thomasina, I did The Fighting Prince of Donegal. That was another Disney film. It was Irish accent this time. Then I did The Forsyte Saga, which totally changed all of our lives, everybody that was in it. And then I did a lot of things for the BBC. I was very lucky, and I won a lot of Emmys, which was very nice. It's a very interesting thing. When you're working on a Disney film and you're very young, you get what is called a Disney image. And when you're young, you think, oh, this is not a good image to have, this is boring, and people will think you're not an exciting and interesting actress. And how silly can you be? Because the real truth is, to make any films which have a feel-good factor to them, or make any entertainment with a feel-good factor, is a fantastic privilege, and there isn't enough of it. But at the time, I thought, oh dear, I must get rid of this Disney image. And I was very stupid, because interestingly enough, what I've gone back to is if I go on the road in a show, I always do one which is a comedy. I realise that making people feel good is really nice. Get a real buzz from it.
And, to coin a phrase, we all lived happily ever after.